It's time for Where You Live with Gene and Tony, the show that's all about owning, buying, selling, renting, and association management. If it involves a home, we'll talk about it. Here's your chance to get your homeowner questions answered. From the Concierge Landscape Studios, here's Gene and Tony.
Needed the shelter of someone's arms, and there you were. Needed someone to understand my...
Welcome to Hour 2 of Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We're broadcasting from the Concierge Landscape Studios. We're brought to you the second hour by Extreme Exteriors. And we've got a lot more show than we've got time for. I can see that already. But some great things that we're going to be talking about a little bit later in the show. Tony, there's some people that are deer hunting on the common areas of a homeowner association. In North Carolina. And you know what? I think it's a good idea.
You do?
Oh, yeah. But we'll talk about that in just a little bit. We've got someone from the township of Emerald Isle who's going to talk to us about what's going on with deer hunting in the common areas around a homeowners association. We're also going to be talking about a little bit later in the show, answering a question from one of our listeners and subscribers of our newsletter, who came to us with a question about something that's going on in their association, wanting to know if this is appropriate. Okay. And if they don't think it is, what can they do to change it? We'll address that. But our first story off the bat here, second hour, is what's taking place in the state of Georgia. And from Atlanta, CBS Atlanta, Channel 46, came a news story just a couple days ago saying that there is a condominium oversight bill that has passing the Senate in Georgia. Now it's up for ratification in the House. What's happening, folks, here is the people in the legislature in Georgia are saying that there are unit owners who are upset with the fact that they don't feel that their homeowner association is being run correctly, that things are being done that should be, that they have the right to know and to see. And so if this were to pass and become law, it says that unit owners will be able to take control of their condominium association when those originally charged with the task fail to do so, and they must be able to react and appropriately within a 30-day time period. But it's very specific, and we're going to talk about what that means. Let's go on and go into the details here. And this is Senate Bill, what is it?
136.
136, thank you. And it is saying that that if a homeowner now is not receiving these items, and tell me if you think that this is fair, that number one, if those who are in charge fail to incorporate the association, that seems reasonable to me. That it needs to be incorporated. Number two, cause that the board of directors to be duly appointed and officers to be elected, and that you don't go without officers for a homeowners association. 3, you maintain and make available to the owners, upon written request, a list of the names, the business, home addresses of the current association directors and officers. All seems reasonable. 4, that there are meetings for members of the association in accordance with the provisions of the governing documents, at least annually. And that number 5, that those in charge should prepare an annual operating budget, establish the annual assessment, and distribute that budget and the notice of the assessment to the owners no later than 30 days after the beginning of a new year. All seems very reasonable. The key component here is they're dealing with a very specific select group, and that is to declarants, or in other words, to the developers and those that are first building the association.
That's right. So what do you think of this?
I can't find any fault in this legislation at all.
I think it's good legislation because we know in the current real estate climate that developers have had to walk away from projects, some half completed, some 2/3 completed, and it's left homeowners in these associations between a rock and a hard place. They couldn't take control of their association themselves yet, and yet the developer's not doing anything anymore. They're to create a board, create a budget, do what's necessary to operate the association. So I think this helps associations out.
I think this is very good. I think some people may take this to construe that it will mean to an existing association after control has been transferred to the homeowners. I don't think there's anything in here that references that.
In fact, you kind of teased it that way.
Well, yes, just to get attention, but I'm going to be true. I'm not going to say something that it's not.
Right.
But there are some associations that have been transferred over to homeowners, and those association board members aren't necessarily passing out that kind of information.
They're not necessarily following these rules,
even upon request, and that is something that I think is probably in. I know it's in the Minnesota state statute, and I got to believe that it's in most state statutes. It's already been developed that way.
But this bill allows Georgia associations to go to court to take control from the developer, and once you've turned your property over to the control of the homeowners and they've elected a board, then you've got methods and processes within your governing documents to replace your board or overcome your board.
This is a very specific time period that's talking about the time that the developer first owns it. It makes sense that the developer's the board and everything because he basically owns everything from the onset and is responsible for those items and getting those services set up from the very beginning as well. But it never, because of developers never thought of going into this period of time that we are in with the real estate bubble popping.
They didn't plan for this.
Didn't plan for it, and so now here they are left holding the bag, and they aren't property managers.
Sure.
And they aren't in the business of running homeowner associations. They're in the business of building a home and then moving on.
Right.
And so, so it's something that needs to be addressed, and I think that's a good thing. Another provision here that I think is real important here, it says that in Georgia there should also be the right of termination of any property management contract in any lease of recreational area facilities or any other contract or lease executed by or on the behalf of the association during the period of this declarant's right to control the association. So it's also saying that, hey, wait a minute, even though we might get the declarant or the developer off of being the sole person in control of the board, they should be able to go to court and be able to get a court action to say 30 days you either comply, declarant, with what the homeowners are asking for, or the control can be turned over to the homeowners. And also along with that would be the idea of contracts. The declarant enters into a lot of contracts. The homeowners may say, hey, wait a minute. We don't want to be obligated for these contracts. We don't want to be obligated for these items. I think that's a good idea, too.
So this bill will let them cancel those contracts?
Yes, it will. And I think it's important to know, folks, we've got folks in our Minnesota legislature who have thought ahead to that. And this, I think, was also because of, I've got to say, I think the impetus came from the LAC, the Legislative Action Committee from Community Associations Institute, and others who helped informing this. And here's what it says in Minnesota, because in our Minnesota state statute, 515B, 1.112. It's called unconscionable agreement of term of contract.
Okay.
And here's what it says in our state statute. It says the court, upon finding as a matter of law that a contract or a contract clause was unconscionable at the time the contract was made, may refuse to enforce the contract, enforce the remainder of the contract without the unconscionable clause, or limit the application of any unconscionable clause in order to avoid an unconscionable result. What they wanted to really help here is another unconscionable action from taking place. But it's a good idea.
What does that mean? What does unconscionable mean? If that's the descriptor, if that's the qualifier, we need to know what that means.
What that means? Okay, something that is unconscionable, and it's not well defined in this case, not because it is just purpose was to be vague. Its purpose was to give some leeway for being able to
interpret,
to be able to get contracts taken out of the association's responsibility. An example, sometimes a builder or developer will enter into a contract with a garbage company and they want a 5-year ironclad contract. Mm-hmm. Well, some homeowner associations, people take control to find out in the governing documents it states you can only enter contracts for no more than 2 to 3 years. Well, that would be an unconscionable idea.
Because it conflicts with their governing documents.
It conflicts with the governing documents.
Okay.
Another idea may be that this vendor or contractor was put in place by the developer because the developer had a good relationship with them, but it's not what the homeowners want because they can find something at a much better price. And so they can get out for those reasons. Or they may say, I don't like the terms of the contract. What if they say in Minnesota, the contract says the trigger depth when we come out to plow will be when it's 3 inches or deeper. Mm-hmm. Well, we know with a lot of properties that we manage, the trigger depth when they come out to plow and shovel snow is a lot less than that. Mm-hmm. And so that would be another idea of something that would be considered
So because 3 inches is not reasonable.
Yes.
All right.
And so unconscionable is saying this isn't unreasonable, and I think that unreasonableness is as determined by the body of the homeowners. It makes sense that they should have that. I think this is a good law.
Okay.
So I appreciate that a lot. Well, hey, we need to take another break. When we come back, what do you think about being able to deer hunt in your homeowner association?
Deer hunting in your own backyard.
That's right. We'll talk about this after these breaks.